Just in case no one ever told you, or you haven't figured it out for yourself, Tyrannosaurus rex is freaking cool. Just look at the size of this tooth, and it's not even one of the big ones. While I could make a whole video explaining why Tyrannosaurus rex is cool, other more qualified people already have. So today, we're just going to focus on painting one. The subject of today's video is a Paleoaccurate Tyrannosaurus rex sculpted by Kevin Zanetti. I've had this model for a while now, and Kevin has had the patience of a saint waiting for me to paint it. I kind of accidentally printed its head hollow when I thought it was solid and didn't vent it, which caused it to explode. But never mind about that. I've printed up a new head and now it's ready for painting. This is the proposed color that Kevin sent me for his model, and I like it. Large animals have a tendency to be browns and grays, and this is browns and grays. Perfect for Tyrannosaurus rex. So let's get to it. I've already base coated it in warm buff, so we can skip that part. So our first step is going to be laying down some antique parchment. This will be primarily the counter shading, but there's also some white on the neck, so it's going to go there too. You know what the color scheme for this Tyrannosaurus rex kind of reminds me of? Is an okapi. It's primarily brown, but there's some white highlights, which kind of form stripes, especially towards the rear. But we'll get to those browns later. For now, we'll just lay down some white. We'll put a little bit of white on the Tyrannosaurus's cheek as well. It'll make a nice highlight later. We're going to keep it very light, but I want to make a very subtle fade to a very, very light blue color towards the end of the tail on this Tyrannosaurus rex. And we'll put that same subtle blue on the Tyrannosaurus's cheek as well. It's really easy to go overboard with bright colors like blue, but I really want to try to keep this T-Rex as realistic as possible. Now that I have all of the lighter colors down, I'm going to work on marking out where the darkest colors are going to be. So using pavement, I'm going to go over the dinosaur and mark out where I want the darkest spots to be. These are going to be very rough markings, and we'll go in and make them look prettier later, but now is not the time for pretty. If you're watching this video and you think, wow, the paint job on that Tyrannosaur looks like dog crap, at this point, I certainly wouldn't hold it against you. But at this point, I'm not even roughing in the patterns yet. The patterns I'm painting now are really basically just reference points. When I go in with the browns a little bit later, I'll make them darker the closer to these markings they are, and lighter the further from these markings they are. And if that doesn't make any sense right now, well, just keep watching. Maybe it'll make sense a little later. Hopefully. Ah, whoops. We'll just add some more pavement to the back of the dinosaur, and then we'll drag it down the thigh. We'll start adding just the hints of the patterns, and we'll elaborate on them a little bit more later. Let's drag some of that pavement color down the right thigh too. Even if it is paleoaccurate, we still don't want a lopsided dinosaur. I'm just gonna widen some of that pavement along the back. And now maybe we'll start doing a little bit of patterning on the torso. That's it. There's the first stripe. We are officially patterning now. We're still keeping those patterns pretty rough at this point, but it'll give us a good idea of where all of the dots and stripes will be, and we can go in and refine them later. I like the idea of a series of stripes coming down from the jaw and connecting with the arm. Hopefully it actually ends up looking good when it's finished. Now I'm going in and darkening the backs of the calves and feet with that pavement color. Every fiber of my being is screaming out not to do that because the bottoms of the feet and the calves are usually lighter colors. But this is how it is on the reference picture, so I want to try to stay as true as possible. And you know what? Sometimes you should try new things. You might be surprised. Gotta get that paint between those toes. Now let's work on some tail stripes. When it comes to dinosaur tails, I usually do thicker stripes spaced further apart. But for this particular Tyrant Lizard King, we're doing thinner stripes, more of them, and spaced closer together. And if you have a keen eye, you may have noticed that the stripes I'm painting now are actually burnt umber, not pavement. My silly little plan here is to make the stripes lighter at the base of the tail, and then have them go darker as we get closer to the tip. How well this works, of course, remains to be seen. Sometimes in my videos I talk about controlling the consistency of your paint. Here's what happens when you make it too runny. I'll just have to go in and fix that later. But for now, we'll just carry on with the repaint. Now that I've got these tail stripes blocked in, we'll go in and start adding some browns. We'll start out with some chestnut on the feet, and then work up from there. Now, because I'm easily distracted, we'll paint the jaw a little bit. Everything we do on the right side, we need to do on the left side too. We'll go ahead and drag that brown down the neck, and we'll go ahead and hit the torso with it too at this point. Both sides. Now let's go ahead and color in that drumstick a little bit. You can feed a lot of people with an ostrich drumstick. I wonder how many people you could feed with a Tyrannosaurus rex drumstick. I'm suddenly very aware that I missed a few stripes on the left side of the tail. I better fix that. Crisis averted. I'm going to add some burnt umber and pavement to my airbrush, and we'll go through and start darkening up around those areas where I drew the pavement earlier. See if we can't fade them in a little bit. I'm also going to go ahead and put some squiggly lines on the thighs. Hopefully that'll give us a nice marbled effect later after it's covered with a few more layers of paint. And working off that same hope, I'm going to go ahead and drag some squiggly lines down from the stripes on the torso. And if we're lucky, a few more layers of paint will make it look awesome. I'll work on these torso stripes just a little bit more, and then we'll add some light brown spots on the neck, just below that white pattern. Alright, that doesn't look completely terrible. Time to blend in the arm and that stripe on the bottom of the neck. For the sake of symmetry, I guess we should do that same thing to the other side too. You know what, this needs more dark brown. And so does the other side. Ah, much better. Now I guess we can move on to some face painting. One of the chief differences between painting a Paleoaccurate Rex like this and a Jurassic Park style Rex is the presence of prominent keratinous formations above the eyes and going down the cheek, as opposed to the scales of the Jurassic Park version. Both are cool, but I am saved the tedious task of picking out individual scales on this Rex. We're going to go in and paint the Tyrannosaurus's lip line now. If we don't, it might look weird later. Looking at the reference material, it looks like the Tyrannosaurus's neck is actually pretty dark on the bottom, so we should probably go in and paint that. Much better. Now let's hit the feet while we've got it turned upside down. We should probably fade in that hard dark line on the inside of the left leg too. And while we're at it, maybe a little more paint on the top of the head. These squiggly lines on the thigh look lonely. We should probably add some more squiggly lines to keep them company. Now we've got a whole happy family of squiggly lines. Time to do the other side. Now we can start refining those stripes a little bit and make them look just a tad prettier than they are. This isn't particularly exciting. I'm just going over them with some more paint and trying to refine their shape and size a little bit, make them a little thicker, maybe a little longer. You know, basic stripe stuff. And since we refined the stripes on this side, we've got to refine the stripes on the other side as well. Nothing like a little repetition to pad the length of a video. Well, the tail's starting to look kind of like an okapi's bum, so I think we're getting close. Alright, time to take a break from that tail for a little bit. Just work on these torso stripes a little bit, and maybe that shoulder too. I think it could use some speckles. And we'll just repeat the process on the other side of the dinosaur. Now we'll just airbrush those tail stripes so it blends in with the rest of the model. And now that I'm bored with the tail, we'll move on to other parts of the dinosaur, like the back of the calf and the neck. Now we'll tie in those shoulder speckles, and then we'll paint the hands, which are pretty dark. This dinosaur is still pretty light in color, so we'll just have those patterns encroach into the lighter areas a little bit more now. In preparation for another darker layer of brown over the thigh, I'm going to go in again and do some darker, bolder, squiggly lines, because I fear the existing squiggly lines will be just too faint to show through a new layer of brown over the thigh. But it's gonna look kinda crappy for a minute. Just bear with me. I'm just going to fade these tail stripes into the dorsal color real quick. Spiffy. Okay, now we'll lay down another layer of darker brown on that thigh, and just obscure the squiggles just a little bit. This would go a little bit smoother if I didn't get a clog in the nozzle on my airbrush, so bear with me. Well, now that that's done, I've loaded some antique parchment into the airbrush, and we're going to go in and do a little bit of pattern repair on this. Right, I think that should just about do it for the antique parchment. Now let's go in and paint the throat. The throat is on the darker side, but has just a hint of blue, so I've mixed up a dark blue-gray to spray on it. And again, I'm really trying not to go overboard with these blue colors. Now I know I just sprayed a bunch of antique parchment on this thing, but now we're going to obscure it with a little bit of brown. And because Kevin packed so much detail into this thing, I'm going to put a little bit of a wash on the feet, just to bring out some of those details. And in classic wash fashion, it's pretty messy. Alright, we'll take a break from painting the dinosaur's skin now and get the inside of the mouth. I'm just using flesh tone with just a tad of metallic red in it. We just want to make sure we thoroughly cover the tongue, the gums, and the top of the mouth all with this same color. And while the inside of the mouth paint is drying, we'll go ahead and paint some claws. We're going to go ahead and do these in dark granite, which is the closest match I could find to the reference material. Don't forget that dew claw. So I know I mentioned not going overboard with the blue multiple times already, and so just to make sure we don't go overboard with that blue, I'm actually going to shrink a lot of the blue on that face right now. We just want a little bit. Alright, now to do a little bit of a bloody wash on the inside of the mouth. And whether it's from a recent prey item, or it's from his teeth lacerating his own gums, I want to make the inside of his mouth kinda gnarly. Now I'm going to go in with some dark gray and paint some of those thick keratinous areas around the brow. Alright, now I think we're going to move on to the eyeball. The reference material shows a bright green eye, so I'm going to use my favorite dinosaur eye color, Color Shift Green. And unlike Dynamo, we're going to do both eyes the same color, because this T-Rex didn't get its eye gouged by a Triceratops. It kind of reminds me of the Kenner Bull T-Rex eyeball. And that sparks joy, because I like that figure. And now for the centerpiece of the eyeball, the pupil. This may come as a surprise, but I use gloss black to paint it. Now, because Tyrannosaurus Rex has a pretty keratinous face, I think we need to do a dry brush over it and bring out some of that texture. The dry brush will also help to blend in that brow with the rest of the face and head, and to bring out the texture of the jugal horn. You know what? I like this dry brush so much, I'm just going to do a dry brush over the entire body, just lightly, but it'll make some of that skin texture pop. And we'll dry brush the feet a little bit more heavily. There's a lot of texture in those feet. They're like a bird's feet, if the bird were the size of an elephant. Now that the feet are done, we'll work on those murder bananas. We're using antique parchment mixed with golden sunset to make my favorite dinosaur tooth color. And once those teeth are done, well, then I think that the dinosaur itself is done.
They're approaching the Tyrannosaur paddock.
You want to live dangerously?
Well folks, that's the end of the video. Once more, I'd like to thank Kevin Zanetti for sculpting this model and making this video possible, so go give him a like and a follow. It's guys like him that make videos like this possible. I've got a few more of Kevin's models, and I can't wait to show them all to you. Until then, stay safe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.